Hi, and thank you for joining me on another episode of the Tech Exec Podcast, where I'll help you create teams worth leading, because life's too short to lead mediocre teams. As always, I'm your host, Aviv Ben-Yosef, coach and consultant at Tech Execs, and our subject today is the hard way. You have to learn to do things the hard way at times, but today I want to talk about how you actually leverage that hard way. First of all, as a coach, as an advisor, when I work with people, I always try to helping them avoid making mistakes when I notice it. I try to make sure that they don't do it the hard way unless necessary. But I'm not always successful. Sometimes we have to do things, we have to get burned the first time in order to actually learn what the danger is or what type of mistake there is. I cannot make decisions for people, right? Recently, I worked with a head of engineering and I specifically told him, what you're doing is actually wrong. It's not going to be a disaster, but I can tell you that in 2 months' time, you're going to tell me you're right. I should have made the decision to get rid of that specific person earlier and then wait on it, even though I have my own excuses, even though I can try to make myself feel good about letting that person stay. And I very clearly explained what my experience tells me, what I know will happen, etc. But that person decided to do what they thought was the right thing to do. Fast forward, it eventually came to time where he had to make the decision 2 months later than I had told him to do. And what he told me was, yeah, you're right. He had learned the hard way. But today, what we want to focus on is the fact that learning the hard way does not happen automatically. We can very easily get to a point where we make a mistake and don't actually get all the learning out of it. In a previous episode, probably a year ago, I talked about managing your mistakes portfolio. You're going to be making mistakes. There's no reason to tell yourself anything other than that. There's no reason to try to avoid making mistakes completely, because then you would not be making any forward progress. And yet, at least if you have these mistakes, learn from it. Get the most possible from them. This client just, nodded along saying, yeah, you're right. I should have done it earlier, and want to move on to the next thing. But I said, hey, or as we say in Hebrew, stop right there. We're not just moving on to the next item on the agenda. I'm not looking for you to tell me that I was right. This is not about that. This is about ensuring that at least when you do it the hard way, you realize that you did it the hard way. You actually learn from it. So I asked what I always ask when I realize that people have made mistakes. It can be because I told them so. It can be just because we realize later that they made a mistake. I say a couple of things. One, what have you learned about yourself that got you to make this mistake in the first place? So let's go over this. What signals did you see along the way, or what self-talk, like what did you tell yourself about why this was okay? If you notice that something might be wrong and yet you delayed, yet you've made the wrong choice. What conversation did you have with yourself? Because I want you to actually think about it, because then later when it eventually happens again, you just might notice it. You might catch yourself and say, hey, I'm in that loop again, and I'm going to stop it this time. So that's the first part. Let's talk about why you even ended up being in that position. What signs, what signals did you notice, did you pick up on and refuse to listen to them? What sort of excuses were you telling yourself that helped you end up in that situation? That's one. Number two is about what exactly did you learn from this? Why are you now saying this was a mistake? Because it's very easy to say, yeah, I should have done things differently and move on. But I'm trying to help you sometimes quantify, even though not everything is easily quantifiable, what actually happened. What could have been different had you made a different choice. So in that case, we talk about what was possible to gain by not having that person in the team for an extra couple of months. Not the salary, which usually is not the issue, but the overhead on the team, what it has cost the managers having to manage that person, what it has caused the teammates who had to work with this person, and whatever things they have on their agenda, whatever things they were supposed to achieve over those 2 months, etc. And I want to make sure that we actually think about this, because when you just do things automatically, when you never take a second to take it in and actually process it, you are very likely to miss out on the learning that you can get out of it. So when you make mistakes, you're going to be making them. At least ensure that you're learning the hard way by asking yourself these mistakes and ensuring that you are not just plowing forward, saying, okay, I'm moving fast and breaking things, but at least notice what you're breaking, whether breaking it was useful, whether next time you can avoid breaking it, maybe you can jump over it, maybe you can just, take a step to the side rather than slamming into the obstacle, whatever it is, so you actually learn from it and ensure that if you're going to be making those mistakes, you're going to be making different mistakes and you're going to maximize the learning out of them. One last point about that is that while this is extremely useful to do personally, when you notice your own mistakes, things that you personally should have decided differently and have acted on them, and those you can do those entirely by yourself or with a coach, of course, like myself. But I write a lot of my decisions here in a notebook that I always have in my back pocket, so I keep track of it. And when I notice that something didn't actually click, when I notice a mistake, I review it. So that's one. Do it with yourself, one-on-one. That's really going to get you so much success. However, if you want to take it a step further, and again, I'm going back to the first sentence I said when we started recording, I want to help you create a team worth leading. Ensure that you're following the same process with your people. I don't care if you call it postmortems. I don't care if it's just happening in a one-on-one coaching session. Ensure that when you notice that people are doing their own learning the hard way, when they are making their own mistakes and you notice them after the fact, at least have them go through the same set of questions so they learn from it, so they are less likely to commit the same mistake in the future. Notice it earlier, and especially if you're working with managers, maybe they will then be able to do the same process and repeat it with those reporting to them in their teams. That's how we create these teams that actually get better with time, teams that find a way to accelerate as things actually become more complex, even when the system grows, even when you have more clients, even when you have more regulation overhead, even as the team gets bigger and the organization gets more complex. If we always learn from our mistakes, we still have a chance in this fight of remaining agile, remaining quick and nimble, if we can learn from our mistakes and maximize them. That's it. Try to do that. Pick one example from the last couple of weeks where you notice a personal mistake or a mistake someone else did. Go through these questions and you'll see the impact that it's going to have on the team almost immediately. I guarantee it. That's it for this week. Thank you for joining me. As always, if you haven't yet, do check out my newsletter. It's the best newsletter online for tech execs, where every week I share this podcast, an article, a video, some exclusive insights, and sometimes just a short story from our lives, getting used to moving to Rome here and finding things that are odd, finding things that we like, just if you want a little sneak peek behind the curtain. So details are in the show notes, and I'll see you here next week. Ciao.